So now we are in a very good position to understand the entire process flow, starting with what exactly happens after you initiate a transaction. Let us try to understand that in depth. Let us take an example of two friends and our favorite ones, Alice and Bob. Now, for example, Alice wants to send a couple of Bitcoins to Bob. The moment Alice starts with committing this transaction on the blockchain network, the first step that happens in this scenario is that this entire transaction goes and sits at a place called the mempool or the memory pool. This is very easily visible on any blockchain explorer. Let us take a look at that as well first before continuing further. So if we go ahead and take a look at any of the blockchain explorers that is available on the internet, you would see that there is something called the mempool as we were discussing, or the memory pool. Once we go inside, you will find an entire collection of terms and data points that are related to the pending transactions that have not yet been committed to the blockchain network. That is what mempool holds. A very interesting fact about this mempool is that this is the place from where miners choose their next transactions for the next block. This is typically and preferably done in the fashion of the descending order of the transaction fee associated with the transactions. Everyone wants or loves money. Hence, miners would always prefer a transaction that has more transaction fee associated with it, and the transaction would have a high probability of getting picked faster and first. Going back, let us take a look at the second essential question that we need to be able to answer. How does a block get decentrally added? And to answer this question, we have to go deep into understanding the core criteria or a concept behind decentralization in a blockchain network that is covered by the concept of distributed consensus. Let us take an example. Even in a group of friends of, say, 3 people, it is very difficult to arrive at a consensus at times. So now imagine a network where there are thousands of associated nodes spread across the entire world, for example. You can imagine how difficult would it be to arrive at a consensus in such a diverse network. To arrive at a solution for this problem, the concept of distributed consensus is taken up. It is nothing but a protocol which defines the rules and criteria based on which the entire network would come at a conclusion regarding the data in the network, preferably transactions that are happening on the network. There are certain common examples of consensus mechanisms, which are the protocols that certain blockchain networks follow, as you may have heard earlier. Proof of work followed by Bitcoin, Ethereum as of now, which is moving to the second consensus mechanism called proof of stake. Then there is delegated proof of stake, there's proof of elapsed time, and so many are there. And these are just plain protocols or rules to help a system which is distributed in nature to arrive at a consensus regarding the state of the transactions happening on that particular blockchain network. As Wikipedia also says, it is the fundamental problem in distributed computing and multi-agent systems where more than one agents or nodes or computer systems are involved, and it is to achieve overall system reliability in the presence of a number of faulty processes. If this definition sounds confusing to you, just remember the earlier explanation, which essentially means that all these systems that Wikipedia has talked about, they need to arrive at a conclusion even if there is a presence of a number of faulty processes which can hamper this decision-making process. This often requires processes to agree on some data point or, as we discussed earlier, the state of the transactions, and which is what is needed during computation of the consensus. This now should give you an understanding of, number one, how the transaction life cycle starts by being placed in the mempool and then waiting to be picked up by miners for the next blocks. And what is this entire concept based on, which is the concept of distributed consensus. And this should pave a good path for you to move ahead with the course.